Hello everyone, welcome to today's Knowledge webinar, What's New in Creo 11. In this webinar, we will be covering the new enhancement of Creo 11, which includes productivity and usability, design for electrification, design for composites, model-based definition, simulation-driven design, and design for manufacturing. A packed-in webinar. And also today, for the ones of you ready to elevate your design game, our partner 3D Connection, maker of the 3D Space Mouse, will give away one wireless space mouse so you can experience precision and control like never before. Today's presenter, Andrea Francis, is an associate solution consultant at PTC, proficient in providing comprehensive overview demonstration for all PTC products. But Andrea focuses on Creo, Codebeamer, and Windchill, and she has expertise in mechanical engineering and 3D modeling design. Welcome aboard, Andrea. And I want to remind everybody where you can find PTC Creo on our catalog. Just search for Creo, and you'll see the entire selection of the Creo product line. And I want to remind everybody that Novage is changing the way designers purchase 3D software, offering more choices, best advice, and faster service. And as I mentioned before, this is the Space Mouse one lucky attendee will be receiving. So fingers crossed, and enjoy the presentation. Um, I will pass the screen to Andrea. Take it away, Andrea.
Oh, thank you, Barbara. And can you see my screen? Just checking
Yes,
before
we
I
can.
start. Okay, cool. And welcome, everybody. My name is Andrea, as Barbara said. I'll be going through our presentation today on the new updates with our new release of Creo 11. And throughout this, we're going to touch on quite a few areas, mostly productivity and usability, design for electrification, design for composite, model-based definition, simulation-driven design, and then design for manufacturing. And we have quite a number of exciting updates with this new release. And we're going to get started with productivity and usability different items. So from that side of things, in Creo, for a long time, we've had our command finder, which is usually in the top right corner of Creo. And that allows you to go and search for commands in your system. It highlights the location for those commands, especially if you're a new user. It teaches you where those need to be found. Now, we've taken that same behavior and applied it to your config and options dialog. When you go in, type in, let's say, the name of the option that you want to change or you want to find, it will highlight it for you in the panel. And that exists for a number of different items for your configs, for your options, for your config.pro settings. So it's much more easily findable in that sense within the panel. There's also been improvements on drag handles. You can now much more easily manipulate, move around your geometry, your drag handles, what's going on with your linear drag, with your angular dimensions. And there's been quite a few improvements to the model tree as well, mostly in terms of expanding and collapsing it. So if you can now incrementally collapse the model tree, put in all of your feature, and then you can have it to change to collapse all features, collapses everything at once, and it doesn't have to go to the base node anymore, but it goes down to the base of your assembly. And then with renaming, with previous releases, we've had quite a bit of feedback from our customers that when they're going in trying to rename their part, let's say, if there is a conflict, like when you go in and put in a space, and Creo usually doesn't let you put in a space when you're renaming items, it would revert back to the original state or the old name that it was. It wouldn't flag it for you. It wouldn't tell you that the name that you tried to change it to didn't work. We've had quite a bit of feedback of, hey, telling us we need something that would highlight or give you a message that would tell you there's an error or there's a conflict. So now in Creo 11, we've applied that. It will highlight for you in the input panel that there's a conflict, and then it would give you a message telling you that you need to go and change something because it was. With selections, we also did a lot of improvements in that area. We've added support for box, lasso, and trace selections for any of your surface collectors. Users can go in and choose your options from the bottom right corner, and then they can choose to draw in a box, a lasso, or a trace around the surfaces that they want to select. And they also have the option to select if they want the visible only surfaces to be selectable, or all of the different surfaces that are onto their graphics area to be selected. And then we've also made improvements in the realm of quilts. So before, the default primary selection option was surfaces. We've gotten quite a bit of feedback to add in an option where you can pick in quilts as your primary selection. A lot of our users prefer working with quilts within the parametric environment, and having that option as the primary option for them to go and select is better for them. It's easier for them to be able to continue modeling on without having to go and pick and choose every single time they need to select something. And we've made improvements to curves. It's easier now to go and pick your composites curve, your full chain of curves, even instead of having to pick in individual pieces at once, you can pick in that full chain altogether. With the realm of sheet metal and multi-body, now this is one of the largest productivity improvements that we have in Creo 11. With multi-body, we've introduced the support for multi-body specifically for sheet metal. Back in Creo 7, we added the functionality of having multi-body support for solid bodies, and we've continued making improvements on it over the years with every release. And now we have added that ability to do both sheet metal and multi-body within the same part, and we've continued to make improvements on it. What you can do is you can have multiple sheet metal components all in a singular body. You can split that sheet metal part into several. You can have multiple sheet metal parts and solid bodies all in one part. And from all of that, you can design in context. You can have multiple thicknesses of your sheet metal bodies all within a singular part, and it opens up a large spectrum of use cases that you would have. You can take one part, make multiple out of it, build say the same thickness part, multiple thickness parts, use your multi-body with your sheet metal within the realm of top-down design. So you have quite a bit of use cases that you can utilize that functionality for. Next, when we're working within Creo, one of the greatest advantages of working with Creo is we work with very complex and large designs and assemblies. And one of the ways for us to be able to work with those is we can simplify them in a lot of different ways. And mostly when we talk about simplification, we talk about shrink wraps. Now with the shrink wraps, we've expanded a bit of the capabilities within that functionality. Shrink wraps themselves allow you to take multiple components in an assembly and create a singular body by reducing the complexity and the amount of geometry involved in it. And it can be done in multiple ways. What we've done is we've added the ability to bring in bodies within shrink wraps. If you have, let's say, an assembly that has many different bodies within it, what you can do is you can pick and choose those bodies and bring them in into a singular part, merge them together into a singular body, or merge all of the assembly components even into a single assembly and create a simplified representation, which would be your shrink wrap of that complex, large assembly or component that you got started with. Now with modeling as well, we've made a few enhancements specifically with the Enclosure Volume tool. Now, a few releases ago, we've added that capability to create enclosure volumes mainly for flow analysis purposes. It was an associated feature, so if you would make a change to your part, the enclosure volume itself wouldn't regenerate or automatically update. You would have to redefine it and have it recalculate. What we've done is we've changed this behavior. We made it now like any other feature inside of Creo. If you go in and make a change to your part, the enclosure itself would regenerate and recalculate. And even with the optimization for it, before you would be able to go in, minimize, build the smallest cube around the shape that you've picked. Now what you can do is you can optimize for orientation as well. And it works for both your part and your assembly mode models. And you can pick onto the geometry or the surface that you want to include or exclude within that optimization. It can be used in various different ways. If you're doing any flow type of analysis, if you're even using it for packaging to find, let's say, the smallest size of package that a product would fit in, this is a great tool to be used in that way. And then with patterns, we've added a new from pattern option for point patterns specifically. It allows you to define a point pattern with a point locations or even coordinate systems being taken from a selected pattern of data points. It can be done from a selected pattern of coordinate systems or a selected pattern containing any of either your points or your coordinate systems at once. And what this does is it will help you to create your patterns faster, have them regenerate faster as well. If you have many of them, you can use that ability with the from pattern capability as identical, so you are able to regenerate and have your patterns populate much more. On the side of welding, we've introduced the concept of joint bodies. Now, this is a new capability that we've added. Joint bodies are a way for you to identify which components you want to perform the weld operation on. In the case of, let's say, spot welding, if you have 5 or 6 components into your assembly, and you want the first operation is to spot weld components 1 and 2. And then you would take the third component and spot weld it onto all of those. Those joint bodies will show you in a new weld tree where you can find each individual body, and you can activate each of them individually. Look at the spot welds, they're contained within that joint body, and you even have the ability to export out the spot weld information in an XMCF file format that you can use later on as needed. We've also made enhancements to core capabilities like offset edge, edge chain, or intent chain references. We have the ability to offset quilts, and that was a capability that was available inside of Creo. Now what we've done is we've added that same ability to solid bodies. If we think of an example, let's say we have a sheet metal component, and that sheet metal has an edge on it, and you want to spot weld at an offset of that edge at a specific distance for that. What you can do is you can now easily create an offset curve and then spot weld onto that curve directly, just providing you a quicker way for you to add in your spot welds onto an offset curve within that geometry. And same thing with sketch tools, you can create a series of sketch points and have them be project directly onto the geometry also for welding purposes. Other enhancements include things around surfacing enhancements. So if we think from a surfacing perspective, we have our freestyle capabilities and we have our style capabilities. Let's start with talking about freestyle. Now in Creo 10, we added the ability to create rotational geometry in freestyle. And in Creo 11, we've still expanded on it. What we've done is after you're making your rotational patterns inside of freestyle and come out of the tool, what it does now is it recognizes it as a pattern that you can perform your reference patterns on with other operations. We've also added a new bevel operation command inside of freestyle, and it's very similar to a chamfer style of a feature. It will alter the topology of your control mesh and give it this sort of chamfer or round type of geometry, and it gives you flexibility to quickly alter your geometry, add sharper edges, blend them from a fillet type geometry to a non-fillet type geometry much more smooth. And then also with subdivisional multi-level components, you can now display the level of resolution that you would have inside of your freestyle tree just for better visibility. With the style enhancements, we've expanded the curve tool inside of style. Previously, with the curve tool, you would be able to alter the degree of the curve, but you had a minimum degree that was supported, which was 3. What you can do now is we can go below that, like having degree type curve if you're thinking of using a conic curve, or a degree one, which would be a straight line in this case. If you want to use those types of curves, create much more smoother interconnected type of surfaces and curves, you're able to utilize those for a much more smoother design environment. And then with editing them, it's a lot more intuitive now. If you, let's say, previously, when you would go in and modify the geometry on one end of your curve, it wouldn't want to modify the other end automatically for you. But now what it does is it will modify it for you instead of keeping it fixed for you to go in and manually having to modify. And then finally, with the style enhancements, what we've done is we've added connection tables. If you're defining a connection between two different surfaces, the table itself will show you what the boundary is, what it's connected to, what your constraint type is, and provide you all of the information that you would need to properly understand how your surfaces are constructed and connected between each other. And that's it with the realm of productability and usability. Let's move on to design for electrification. But just before I do that, because I do know this is quite a bit of content, Barbara, do we have any questions in the queue so far?
Not yet, not so far.
Okay. Then let's move on to talking about electrical design inside of Creo. And the first thing we're going to touch on is cable. In Creo 11, we focused on cleaning up some of our cabling capabilities. First, what we've done is we've modernized the remove location menu. This used to be quite a bit of an old sort of UI. We've taken it, modernized it, even added some more options to it. What you can do with it now is you have a dynamic preview of your work, better filtering, undo, redo support. So there's quite a bit of functionality that has been added to it to make it in tandem with the UI of Creo, and also with the cabling tree. Now, the notion of the cabling tree was something we've introduced back in Creo 10, and we're continuing to take feedback from our customers, from our users, and we've added some additional capabilities specifically around the filtering of it in Creo 11 just to enhance how it's being used. And then finally, on the side of productivity enhancements within cabling, we've added controls for the cabling tree, like I've just said. We've added support for cosmetic features. So now if you don't want, let's say, your cable ties to be displayed, you can choose from that to not have them be displayed out. If you have quite a cluttered model with a lot of components, a lot of features, you can pick and choose what you want visible in front of you and what you don't want to. And then for ECAD support, what you can do now is you can bring in ECAD data inside of Creo. And we've added quite a bit of controls on what you can bring and choose to bring with you. You can control the colors, the visibility, the transparency of each items that you're bringing in, and pick and choose each one. What do you want to bring in and what do you want to include in next? And that's it on the side of design for electrification. Let's go through design for composites. And I think this is one of the most exciting updates that we have with the Creo 11 release. So back in Creo 10, we have introduced composite design, analysis, and manufacturing with Creo, which it's a new venture for us. We've added that new functionality completely as a new extension. And we've been taking a lot of feedback from our users, from our internal and external teams that have been working with us on this tool to see what we can do to continue making improvements on it and see what we can add in terms of functionality. So in Creo 11, we've added improvements in 3 main areas. First, around expanding the existing functionality that we have. We have zone-based design, which I'll go through in the next slide. And then on the manufacturing side as well, we have quite a bit of updates in that realm. But first, around existing functionality. With transitions, we've improved the usability of transitions. What you can now do is you can go in and modify your transitions right in your graphics area, so you don't have to do it from the tree or from the ribbon. With the laminate section, we've added cross-highlighting between the plies and the graphics area where your model is and the tree. So you can select on individual plies and it will be easier to visualize and interact with them between the graphics area and the tree itself. And then with the draping simulation, we've improved the algorithm that does the calculation for the draping and in Creo. You can now see the flat ply in even a separate window. So if you're familiar with sheet metal inside of Creo, you'll be able to see an unbent state versus a bent state in a separate window. This is kind of the same functionality where you can see the flat ply in a separate window and see the simulations right in front of you in the main window. Now, the next area, which is our most exciting area, is adding the concept of zone-based design. This is a new concept for us. Back in Creo 10, what we had was you would be able to manually lay up your plies and create them one by one. But as we've had users work through the tool, as we've had feedback from our customer base and our users, you want to be able to create thousands of stack ups or different ply stack ups that you would have quickly, and you don't want to create them one by one manually. So what we've come up with is this zone based design concept. The notion here is you can segment your model into different zones, and in each of these zones you can specify what ply stack up is going to be applied on it. So what you would do is you would define a zone stack up and have it be saved out onto your local disk, let's say, and it will tell you how many plies you have, the design, the order, the orientation, all of those information. And when you have your stack up saved, it can be used in the zones and reused on and edited further through as needed. So when you have all of those, you would go in, lay out your zones, and then apply a zone stack up to each zone, and then quickly build up hundreds of plies instantly. And the result here is that you've automatically defined your zone stack ups in each zone automatically. So you can go in, modify them as needed, and it will be very helpful if you have larger designs with hundreds of plies, and then you want to have them be even tied in the simulation. If you want to do simulation in one given zone versus the other, those are some of the capabilities that it's going to give. And then finally, within Composites, the improvements have been made in the manufacturing realm. Now, when it comes to manufacturing composite designs, typically you would need to take your plies and extend them out for your molds. We've added capabilities to extend the ply boundary beyond where they were set, and they will extend within the realm of your mold surface to really keep your design consistent for you and quickly have it extend out and prepared out for manufacture. We've also made improvements for the core sampling. This will allow you to pick any point on your model, and it will tell you at that point what your plies are, the core material, the order underneath that point, and it's going to be very useful when you're creating your ply books and putting in your information inside of these ply books. And then finally, one of the most requested updates is support for laser projection files. We've added that support for two leading laser projection systems, Lab and Vertec. And this is an export format that's going to allow you to export out in specific formats or standards formats for all of your different ply information, your boundary information, seed points, orientations, your rosettes. And what we're doing here is we're doing it based on the uncured thickness. So this is because we want the projection to be correct. We want it to be accurate for the uncured material as you're laying it up and preparing to manufacture and cut it. And that's it with design for composites. Next, let's talk about model-based definition and what we've done within that realm. The main focus for us in model-based definition in Creo 11 was tables. What you can now do is you can create simple tables similar to creating a table inside of a PowerPoint slide. You can go in, define your number of rows, your columns, and even pick from existing and available tables that we already have predefined in here. But what you can do is you can place those tables either flat on the screen or on your annotation plane that you decide. And you have the control of scaling it, dragging the individual columns and rows to lay them out exactly as you want. But it would let you put in your parameter callouts and even your semantic references and information inside of that table for all of your model-based definition models. And just to note, for now, we're only supporting simple tables. We're going to be working on including repeat regions with future releases of Creo. So this is just a start for us within that realm. With the GDNT, we've continued expanding on it. Now, the GDNT Advisor is an extension that gives you expert guidance on the application of your geometric dimensioning and tolerance information. We've added support for some ISO standards for general tolerancing. You can now define your tolerancing for linear, angular, and general profile tolerances. And the purpose here is to properly set standard rules that are going to be applied by everybody within the team, within the organization that's defining these callouts. And we've added the ability to combine information on simple holes and make a single callout. Before the Creo 11 release, when you would go in and create just normal holes, what you would do is a lot of times you would create them with multiple different elements that each have their own properties. And when you're calling out, let's say, the tolerancing, the geometric referencing, the dimensioning, you would display out these annotations individually, and it wouldn't let you combine them all into one singular callout. But now you can pick and choose if you want to combine them all into one for all of your IC holes, or if you want them to be individually annotated out onto your 3D model. And then finally, we've enriched the support for slab installed features and also for tapered slab installed features as well in GDNT. Next, let's talk about simulation-driven design, and we're going to talk about some of the few different extensions that we have with simulation inside of Creo, starting with our Creo Simulation Live tool. Now, the main enhancement is we've added conjugate heat transfer within Simulation Live. You can go in, evaluate the effect of heat flow into your analysis, and this is going to be great because you can do a lot of quick iterations as you're working onto your analysis. You can understand the effect of the heat flow and then continue doing your design, do your rapid iterations, get results quickly as needed. And even in terms of displaying out the results, you can display out your structural and your fluid results for it. And just as a note, we are staying up to date as well with the latest ANSYS solvers for that tool because we've partnered with them to create our Creo Simulation Live tool. Now, moving on to another tool, which is Creo ANSYS Simulation. This is another tool which is more in the realm of doing FEA sort of analysis. We've added a strong capability in the advanced package of Creo ANSYS Simulation, focusing mostly on transient structural studies. You can do your structural simulation and have it be time dependent. And there's also been a few controls that we support for that specific study, like your step durations, your sub-stepping, your initials, velocity, your damping. And we've also included the proper constraints that you would need to define for your functions of times. But overall, this is going to allow you to run multi-step structural simulations right onto your models inside of Creo. And then finally, with generative design, the first capability is a new control to define the minimum thickness. Let's take an example of building, for example, a rib. You can say what the minimum size of that rib is going to be, and that can be used in multiple ways. If you're doing something on the additive manufacturing side or casting, and you have certain restrictions that you need to apply on that minimum thickness, you can have it be applied and then have it generate designs based on them. And even with bearing loads as well, you can explicitly define those bearing loads when you're defining your studies, have them be used out when Creo is going to generate those designs for you. And then finally, planar symmetry. Planar symmetry is something that we've introduced back in Creo 10, and in Creo 11, we've also expanded on it, specifically around the reconstruction of it. When you're reconstructing a boundary representation or a facet geometry of your model, of your generated model, the planar symmetry can be considered with the reconstruction. So it's going to have you have that symmetry within the reconstructed model, and you could use it as your reference for the generated design. And finally, our last section is talking about manufacturing. And we do quite a bit on the manufacturing side of things inside of Creo. First, around additive manufacturing, what we do is we have our lattice features inside of Creo, and these allow you to create a very interesting types of geometries that can be used in multiple different ways to achieve multiple different types of goals. And one of the exciting new additions is we've added something called connecting lattices. And as you can see in the video on the slide, it allows you to take in two or more beam-based lattices and merge them together without any issues in terms of connection. It will find the best way to have those connect together and merge together appropriately without any issues or a broken type of geometry. With beam lattices, we've made improvements to our stochastic lattices. We took the randomization option that was available and made it available now as a parameter. So it can be used in a family table. And we've also added pore size definition. This is going to be very important, especially in industries like the medical industry, for example, when you're building something like an implant. You need the correct pore size to allow your bone to regrow. So it can be used when you're building those types of structures, define the size of the pores that are needed, or even in the automotive industry when you're making something like a filter, let's say, and you want to define the minimum size for the particle of the fluid that will go through that filter within beam lattices, within your stochastic classes, you also can define those. And then we've added the wrap capabilities for our beam lattices, can help you manipulate, stretch out, and twist the geometry to any shape that you would want it to be used for. And then you can also export out your information. You have options on if you want to export out 3MF file formats or STL file formats when you are in part. Now, on the side of subtractive manufacturing, there's a few new additions and modifications in three different realms. First, with high-speed machining, we've added support for two new 4-axis rotary machining capabilities, the roughing and the finishing tool path. So the class that you build can now pass 360 degrees, and there's support for different types of mills, like your end mills, your ball mills, your bullnose mills, and then you can define those operations with those new additions. With milling, we've expanded the trajectory milling toolpaths, you have the ability to have a tangent entry or exit option when you're creating, let's say, trajectory mill that is normal to your surface, and you have added axis controls. When you're doing, let's say, a 4 or 5 axis mill, you have the option to use a curve that doesn't necessarily lie on the surface that your machine is on. You would have a lot more improved control over the operation of your tools, where they're going. And if they're retracting, we've also did some work on the retract motion, where you have the ability to, let's say, trim retract to a plane. And what this means, if you're speeding up your machine operation, you can trim it to a surface, retract at a given speed, and then it's going to retract to that plane that you've defined. And once it gets past that, it will go back into your rapid motion. And this will help you control your machine, your tools in a bit more of a controlled manner, and in a much more efficient way as well, in terms of how you're utilizing the speeds and the controls of those different tools and machines that you have. And then from a visibility and usability perspective, we've added controls to turn off different types of items. When you're defining your operations, it could get quite cluttered onto the screen. So you can turn off, let's say, your mill volumes, your mill windows, mill surfaces, turn profiles, and then just have a bit more visibility when you're working. And then finally, turning. We've made a few improvements as well to turning. First, we've modernized the 4-axis area turning, making it a bit more consistent and a modern dashboards like all of the other toolpaths that we have inside of Creo. We've improved the material removal capabilities for turning profiles, specifically when creating a turning profile in two disconnected areas of the model itself. There's a series of capabilities as well that we've introduced back in Creo 10 to 2-axis turning. We've added those now to 4-axis, where you can go in, let's say, and specify your color compensation per slice, have better control over your clearance distance, and better entry and exit control for your different toolpaths. And all of these different improvements, these new additions, are some that we've had over the years from our customers. We've worked on them. We're going to continue making improvements on them as needed. And that's really what we're doing here inside of Creo. So these are all of the new additions to Creo 11 specifically. So if you have any questions or anything that I can help answer today.
You, Andrea. Yeah, we have a few more minutes left, and I urge you to type in your questions so we, we're the best person to answer them. In the meantime, if you don't mind, Andrea, I'm going to share my screen so I
Yeah.
can show everybody where they can find, first of all, Creo 11 on our website. As you can see, version 11 is packed with improvements, and if you can't wait to try it, give us a call, email us, or you can just add to cart. And if you need special configuration, we're always here to help you. And as I mentioned at the beginning, today we have a fantastic giveaway. We're giving away a Space Mouse Wireless to one of the lucky people that register for the webinar. So if you hear from me after the webinar, congratulations. And I don't see questions. You were so clear, and you cover a lot of ground. I think everybody was very impressed. I know I was. I want to remind everybody that I've been recording the presentation, and I will be posting it on our YouTube channel later today. Just search for Noveg. Anything else, Sandra? I think you went above and beyond.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again for joining us today, and have a great rest of the day, everybody. Bye bye.